Part 1. The Trap of Approval. Most men spend their lives chained to the approval of others, even when they pretend otherwise. They adjust their tone so as not to offend, they shape their actions so as to be accepted, and they sacrifice their true strength in order to win the fleeting affection of the crowd. This pursuit seems harmless, even noble, but in truth it is a poison that corrodes a man from within. For to seek to be liked is to place one's value in the eyes of others, and what is given by others can be withdrawn by others. A man who relies on approval for his sense of worth has no core of his own. He is like a reed in the wind, bending whichever way the breeze blows, incapable of standing firm when storms arrive. Machiavelli understood this weakness clearly. In his writings, he revealed that it is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both. The principle is not a call to cruelty, but a recognition of human nature's instability. Love and approval are founded on emotion, and emotion shifts with circumstance, mood, or rumor. A crowd that cheers a man today may curse him tomorrow. Respect born from strength, however, endures. Fear rooted in discipline and resolve creates a stability that affection never can. The man who accepts this truth ceases to chase the illusions of approval and instead pursues the harder, more permanent path of commanding respect. To desire being liked is to surrender. It is to place yourself in the hands of others, hoping they will be kind enough to grant you peace. But others are not kind, nor consistent, nor loyal to anything but themselves. The one who wishes to be liked is forced to constantly calculate what will please, what will offend, what will keep him in the good graces of the fickle. He lives not as a man, but as a servant to the whims of the many. This is not power. It is submission disguised as sociability. The path of respect requires something different, indifference to approval. A man who is free from the need to be liked becomes unshakable, for he is no longer vulnerable to the tides of opinion. He does not bend his principles to match the mood of others. He does not silence his strength to appear gentle. He does not abandon truth for the sake of comfort. Such a man commands attention not by pandering to it, but by standing apart from it. His power is not in being adored, but in being unignorable. Machiavelli knew that human beings admire strength even as they complain about it. They fear decisiveness even as they rely on it. They resent authority even as they submit to it. Approval seekers imagine that harmony is gained by being pleasant to all, yet they fail to see that such pleasantness strips them of weight. No one admires the man who bends to every demand. No one respects the one who silences himself to avoid offense. At best, such a man is tolerated. At worst, he is despised for his weakness. To live for approval is to die by it. The man who chases the smile of others becomes their prisoner, always working, always adjusting, always retreating from his own strength in order to stay accepted. And yet acceptance never lasts. People tire of those who seek them. They despise the neediness of those who require them. Approval seeking is a hunger that can never be filled, because the crowd will never grant stability to the man who looks to it for identity. The first step on the ruthless path to respect is to break this chain. Stop asking, "Do they like me?" Instead, ask, "Do they respect me?" Stop calculating how to please. Start cultivating how to stand. Abandon the soft slavery of approval and embrace the hard freedom of indifference. Respect is not won by asking for it. It is commanded by being worthy of it. The man who ceases to need approval becomes untouchable, and in his untouchability lies the beginning of power. Part 2. Respect versus popularity, the masculine divide. Popularity is a shadow, a reflection without substance. It dazzles those who hunger for attention, for it gives the illusion of importance. Yet shadows vanish when light shifts, and popularity disappears the moment moods change. Respect, by contrast, is like stone, unyielding, solid, difficult to shape, but enduring once established. Machiavelli's insight was simple. The man who chases popularity will always be enslaved to the desires of the crowd, but the man who commands respect enslaves the crowd to his strength. Consider the nature of popularity. It can be gained by flattery, by pandering, by presenting a pleasing mask to those who watch. But such gains are fragile. The same tongue that flatters today will condemn tomorrow. The crowd does not love the man, It loves the reflection of itself that the man has given back to it. To be popular is to be hollow, for the man has emptied himself to fill the desires of others. Respect requires the opposite. It is earned by holding to one's principles even when those principles are scorned. It is won by standing unyielding when others demand submission. It is built upon the courage to offend when truth requires offense, the strength to deny when weakness would grant. Respect is not cheap, and it is not given freely. It is torn from the world by those willing to sacrifice approval in order to preserve integrity. The man of popularity bends with every wind. He cannot be trusted, for he is always seeking the safer path, the easier path, the path that secures more affection. The man of respect, however, is predictable in his firmness. He may not be liked, but he is trusted to remain true to his own will. In the court of power, trust born of fear or admiration is worth infinitely more than the shallow applause of the crowd. Machiavelli understood the paradox. People complain about strong men even as they follow them. They curse authority even as they rely on it. They may not like the one who commands, but they submit to him because he is unmovable. In this way, respect is stronger than popularity, for popularity is a gift granted and withdrawn at whim, but respect is forged through unshakable strength and is difficult to erase. Ask yourself, do you want to be remembered as one who pleased many but was respected by none, or as one who divided opinion yet could never be ignored? History does not celebrate the popular, it celebrates the respected. The masses are forgotten, the firm are eternal. This is the masculine divide. The weak chase to be liked, the strong choose to be respected. The weak flatter in order to be safe, the strong risk hatred in order to stand firm. The weak seek company at any cost, the strong endure solitude until others are drawn to their strength. Respect is the currency of power, and those who seek popularity are forever bankrupt. Machiavelli's teaching is harsh but clear. Abandon the illusion of popularity. It will betray you. Embrace the reality of respect. It will protect you. To be liked is to live on borrowed time. To be respected is to step into eternity. Part 3. The futility of pleasing. There is no greater illusion than the belief that one can please everyone. It is the dream of the weak, the fantasy of the timid, the curse of those who cannot endure the thought of disapproval. Yet to attempt such a thing is not only futile but destructive, for it strips a man of his essence and leaves behind only a hollow figure molded and remolded by the demands of others. Human beings are fickle by nature. What one admires, another despises. What one praises, another condemns. To live in pursuit of universal approval is to chase two opposite winds at once, an impossible effort that leaves the soul torn apart. A man who bends to one opinion will soon offend another. A man who tries to satisfy every desire will inevitably satisfy none. In trying to be everything, he becomes nothing. Machiavelli warned that the prince who attempts to be universally adored will soon lose his state. In the struggle for power, pleasing all is the surest path to destruction, for the people are never satisfied. They demand generosity until you are weak, mercy until you are vulnerable, and humility until you are beneath them. Their approval is not a gift but a leash, drawing tighter with every concession you make. The man who feeds this appetite soon finds himself devoured by it. Look closely at the world. The man who strives to offend no one ends up being despised by everyone. He is seen as weak, for he lacks the courage to stand firm. He is seen as untrustworthy, for he changes with each demand. He is mocked, for his desire to please reveals his desperation. The crowd does not admire the one who bends, it admires the one who resists. People may complain about strength, but they secretly crave it, for in strength lies security. This is why those who attempt to please all inevitably fail. Even if they succeed for a moment, that moment is fleeting. Approval is not permanent. It dissolves with the first inconvenience, the first rumor, the first sign of weakness. The man who has built his life upon such approval collapses when it is withdrawn, for he has no foundation of his own. He is like a house built upon sand, grand in appearance but doomed at the first tide. The ruthless man understands this truth and rejects the path of pleasing. He accepts that disapproval is inevitable. He does not fear hatred, for hatred is a mark of distinction. To be hated by some is proof of strength, proof of firmness, proof that he has not bowed to every demand. Even Machiavelli noted that it is impossible to govern without offending some, and that to avoid all offense is to surrender all power. The man who ceases to seek universal approval gains freedom. He no longer calculates what will please, but what will endure. He no longer silences his words for fear of offense, but speaks with the clarity of one who is not bound by the reactions of others. He no longer fears solitude, for solitude is the companion of strength. In this way, he becomes something more than a mirror of the crowd. He becomes a figure the crowd must reckon with. The futility of pleasing all is not a tragedy, but an opportunity. It frees the man who accepts it to pursue respect rather than affection, strength rather than applause, permanence rather than popularity. Those who demand universal approval destroy themselves in the chase. Those who reject it rise above the chase altogether. Thus, the choice stands. Either be consumed by the hunger of others or stand apart and let them hunger for what you alone can give. To reject the futility of pleasing all is to embrace the power of commanding respect from some, even if it means the hatred of others. And hatred in the end is less dangerous than indifference. For a man who is hated is still feared, still remembered. But a man who spends his life trying to please everyone is forgotten the moment he fails to please anyone.
Part 4. The path of ruthless integrity. Integrity is often spoken of as kindness, as honesty, as adherence to the rules of others. But true integrity, the kind that commands respect and instills fear, is not softness, nor mere obedience to a moral code invented by the crowd. True integrity is the ruthless alignment of one's actions with one's own will. It is the unyielding refusal to betray oneself for the sake of approval. It is the courage to stand firm, even when all others demand compromise. Machiavelli understood that the ruler who shifts with the winds of opinion is no ruler at all. To hold power, one must have a core that cannot be moved. This is integrity in its purest form, not being liked, not being praised, not even being understood, but being consistent to one's own principles regardless of cost. Such integrity may not win affection, but it wins something greater: fear, respect, and permanence. The world tempts men with the sweetness of compromise. Give a little here, it whispers, and you will be loved. Surrender this, it promises, and you will be safe. But every compromise weakens the foundation. Every surrender erodes the stone of the self. Soon nothing remains but dust, and dust commands neither fear nor respect. Integrity, then, requires ruthlessness, not cruelty toward others, but cruelty toward weakness within oneself. The man of ruthless integrity does not bend for approval. He does not cheapen his words to flatter. He does not betray his will to appease. When he gives mercy, it is because he has chosen, not because he has been forced. When he withholds, it is by his judgment, not by another's demand. His integrity makes him dangerous, for he cannot be bought or swayed. The world knows this, and though it may resent him, it cannot ignore him. Such men are rare, for most cannot endure the cost. To be ruthlessly true to oneself often means being disliked, often means being slandered, often means standing alone. But this solitude is strength. For the man who can stand alone without bending is the man who cannot be destroyed by the loss of others. Approval may be taken, but integrity remains. Respect may waver, but the core remains unbroken. Machiavelli knew that respect is forged in this crucible. The prince who is firm, even when unpopular, commands more loyalty than the prince who bends to gain love. People may not like the man of ruthless integrity, but they trust him, for they know he will not betray his nature. They may not adore him, but they rely upon him, for he is consistent in his strength. In time, even his enemies come to admire what they cannot break. Integrity is not about pleasing others. It is about commanding yourself. It is about mastering your will to such a degree that no opinion, no approval, no threat can shift you. This is why ruthless integrity is the highest form of strength. It frees a man from the chains of the world and makes him a master within it. The path of ruthless integrity is not easy. It requires sacrifice, the sacrifice of comfort, of popularity, of ease. But what it gives in return is worth infinitely more. Respect that cannot be stolen, strength that cannot be bent, and a legacy that cannot be erased. To walk this path is to live not as a shadow, dependent upon the light of others, but as a stone, enduring long after the light has shifted. Part 5. The seduction of power through fear. There is a truth that soft men despise, but strong men accept. Fear commands obedience where love falters. Love is fragile, vulnerable to betrayal, shifting with moods and circumstances. But fear is iron. Fear compels action even when affection is gone. Fear binds even when loyalty has decayed. It is the most reliable chain in the arsenal of power. Machiavelli, in his wisdom, asked the eternal question, is it better to be loved or feared? His answer was not romantic, but ruthless. It is best to be both, but if you must choose fear. Why? Because love depends on the goodwill of others, and goodwill is fleeting. Fear depends on strength, and strength can be maintained. A man who leans on love must beg for it. A man who commands fear does not beg, he dictates. Fear is not brutality. Fear is clarity. It is the recognition that men are selfish, that they will abandon you when it benefits them, that their affection will dissolve when tested by hardship. But fear holds them steady, for they know the cost of betrayal. To be feared is to be respected at the deepest level, to be a presence that cannot be ignored, a figure whose disapproval is more terrifying than another's affection is comforting. The weak argue that fear breeds hatred. They are right, but they misunderstand. Hatred without strength is nothing. Hatred without action is powerless. The man who is feared can afford hatred, for those who hate him dare not move against him. What is hatred compared to power? What is dislike compared to the security of command? Hatred may whisper, but fear silences. Hatred may scheme, but fear paralyzes. Hatred may burn, but fear contains it. Consider history. Rulers loved by all vanish in an instant when times grow harsh, for love does not shield against daggers. But rulers feared, even if hated, are harder to strike down, for their fear commands loyalty from necessity. Armies march for them not because of affection, but because of discipline. Ministers obey them not because they are adored, but because they are dreaded. The love of the people cannot save a king from betrayal, but fear can prevent betrayal from taking root. Even in personal life, this principle holds. The man who is feared, not as a tyrant, but as one who cannot be disrespected, commands more loyalty than the man who tries endlessly to be liked. The friend who knows you will not tolerate betrayal will treat you with greater care. The rival who knows you will not forgive an insult will tread carefully. The partner who knows your respect is not given cheaply will guard it fiercely. Fear does not mean cruelty. It means boundaries, enforced without hesitation. The seduction of fear is that it never deceives you. Love deceives, for it makes you believe it will last forever. Fear tells the truth. It lasts only as long as you enforce it. And so the man of power is vigilant. He cultivates an aura that cannot be trifled with. He speaks in a way that is measured, calm, but edged with the steel of consequence. He acts decisively, never bluffing. His presence is felt not because he shouts, but because others know he does not bluff when crossed. To wield fear without cruelty is the art. Cruelty without wisdom breeds rebellion. But measured fear, combined with respect, breeds stability. The ruthless man need not constantly punish. His reputation punishes for him. His silence is enough. His refusal is enough. His mere presence reminds others that to betray him is to risk destruction. Thus, fear is not a tool of the barbarian, but of the strategist. Love decorates a man's life, but fear defends it. Love flatters a man's ego, but fear secures his power. The weak cling to affection, but the strong cultivate fear. And in the end, when love fades, fear remains. This is the seduction of power through fear. It may not make you adored, but it will make you unshakable. Part 6. The necessity of being misunderstood. There is a strange truth about greatness. The greater a man becomes, the less he is understood. Ordinary men live by ordinary values, bound by the customs and comforts of the herd. When they encounter someone who does not bend to these values, who refuses to live by the code of being liked, they recoil. They call him cruel, arrogant, ruthless, dangerous. They misunderstand him because they cannot see beyond the limits of their own smallness. Machiavelli himself was reviled for this reason. He did not speak to soothe the masses, he spoke to guide rulers. His words were called dark, immoral, wicked, but in reality, they were simply true. And truth, when stripped of illusions, is always feared. To be misunderstood is not a flaw, but a necessity of speaking what others cannot bear to hear. If the herd understood you, it would mean you had conformed to their illusions. To be misunderstood is proof that you are living above them. A man who insists on always being understood shackles himself. He must constantly explain, constantly soften, constantly dilute his will until it matches the comprehension of the masses. This is slavery. To live freely is to accept that you will be misunderstood, to embrace the solitude of being beyond the grasp of ordinary minds. The necessity of being misunderstood is, in truth, the necessity of strength. When others call you cold, it may simply mean you are disciplined. When others call you arrogant, it may mean you refuse to bow. When others call you ruthless, it may mean you refuse to be manipulated. Their misunderstanding is not a judgment of your weakness, but an acknowledgement of your difference. History is full of men who were hated in their time, but revered in their legacy. They were misunderstood when they were strong, but admired once they were gone. This is because the herd only understands strength when it no longer threatens them. While you live, your refusal to bend provokes their resentment. But when you are gone, your unbending nature becomes a monument they cannot ignore. Thus, being misunderstood is not temporary. It is eternal proof that you lived as yourself. To embrace this necessity requires a cruel discipline of the ego. The ego wants to be seen, recognized, praised. It wants to be validated by the understanding of others. But the man of Ruthless will kill this craving. He does not seek to be understood. He seeks to endure. He does not crave to be admired. He craves to be unbroken. If others misunderstand him, so be it. Their misunderstanding changes nothing. What, after all, is understanding? It is nothing but agreement dressed as perception. People claim to understand when you confirm their illusions. They fail to understand when you refuse to mirror them. But truth does not depend on their comprehension. Strength does not require their recognition. Respect does not require their approval. The necessity of being misunderstood is therefore the necessity of being free. To live without bending to their comprehension is to live without chains. To stand firm while they slander, to act decisively while they condemn, to remain unmoved while they misinterpret. This is the strength that carves respect out of hatred. Thus the man of power accepts misunderstanding as the cost of being real. He does not explain endlessly, for explanation is submission. He does not justify, for justification is weakness. He simply acts and lets the world rage. In the end, the world always follows strength. The misunderstood today become the respected tomorrow, not because they change, but because the world slowly awakens to the fact that they were right all along. Part 7. The Strength of Silence and the Power of Mystery. In an age where men are encouraged to reveal everything, to explain themselves endlessly, to bleed their thoughts and emotions out for validation, the truly powerful man chooses silence. Silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. Mystery is not weakness, it is control. The man who knows how to remain silent in the right moments holds a kind of authority that words can never buy. Machiavelli understood this principle well. A ruler who speaks too freely reveals his mind, and when the mind is revealed, it can be exploited. But a ruler who speaks sparingly, who guards his intentions, who allows no one to know fully what he thinks, such a ruler terrifies his rivals. Why? Because uncertainty is fear. Men can prepare for what they see, but they crumble before what they cannot predict. Words are like currency. Spend them too freely, and they lose their value. The weak man talks to prove himself. The strong man says little, and the weight of his silence compels respect. Think of the men you have met who speak endlessly. Do you respect them? Or do you dismiss them as desperate for attention? Now think of the man who watches quietly, who reveals nothing, who answers in measured tones only when necessary. That man draws attention without seeking it. His silence becomes a weapon sharper than any insult. Mystery is power because it forces others to imagine. And imagination is far more terrifying than reality. When your enemy does not know what you are thinking, he projects his fears upon you. He imagines plots that do not exist, plans that may or may not be true. He spends his energy chasing shadows while you remain still. Mystery does not weaken you. It multiplies you in the minds of others. They cannot know whether you are strong or weak, merciful or ruthless, forgiving or vengeful, and so they assume the worst. Even in personal life, mystery commands respect. The man who reveals every insecurity, who complains about every slight, who seeks sympathy for every difficulty, he is exposed. His vulnerabilities can be manipulated because he has placed them in the open. But the man who is silent, who reveals nothing unnecessary, who remains unreadable, that man cannot be toyed with. He may suffer, but no one sees it. He may struggle, but no one exploits it. His silence is his armor, his mystery his shield. To cultivate silence is to master restraint. It is to kill the urge to explain, the urge to justify, the urge to be understood. These urges enslave men. They force you to give away what should remain yours, your inner strength. The powerful man does not explain. He acts and lets the results speak. He does not justify. He decides, and the consequences follow. Explanation is for the weak. Silence is for the strong. Mystery is also a test. Those who cannot handle not knowing your every thought will reveal themselves. They will become anxious, demand answers, beg for clarity. In their desperation, they expose their weakness. Meanwhile, your silence reveals nothing of you, but everything of them. Mystery is the mirror in which others betray themselves. Thus, the strength of silence and the power of mystery cannot be overstated. To speak is to risk. To reveal is to weaken. But to remain silent is to control the frame. To remain mysterious is to stand above those who beg to be known. Speak when necessary, but guard your mind as the fortress it is. The walls of silence protect you from enemies, while the shadows of mystery magnify your power in their imagination. Part 8. The Art of Controlled Cruelty. There is cruelty that is reckless, and there is cruelty that is controlled. The reckless man lashes out in anger, driven by impulse, consumed by emotion. His cruelty is noise, easily anticipated, easily countered. But the controlled man, the Machiavellian man, uses cruelty with precision. His cruelty is not an outburst, but a scalpel. It is delivered at the right moment, in the right amount, for the right purpose. And because it is calculated, it is feared far more than reckless rage. Machiavelli was clear. A ruler cannot afford to be merciful when mercy endangers power. Excessive mercy breeds rebellion. Excessive leniency breeds contempt. Mercy given without strategy is not virtue, it is weakness. But cruelty, when measured, prevents greater cruelty in the long run. A single decisive punishment can prevent years of chaos. A single ruthless act can eliminate threats before they grow. Thus, controlled cruelty is not savagery, it is wisdom. Consider the surgeon. He cuts flesh, causes pain, draws blood, but he does it to save the patient. His cruelty is not chaos, it is necessity. So too with the man of power. Sometimes an enemy must be struck down harshly, not for pleasure, but for survival. Sometimes a traitor must be punished publicly, not for vengeance, but for order. Controlled cruelty teaches lessons that mercy never can. Weak men misunderstand this principle. They believe kindness will win loyalty. They believe compassion will earn respect. But kindness without boundaries breeds parasites. Compassion without strength breeds exploitation. The cruel truth is that men respect those who can harm them, but choose not to more than those who are incapable of harm. Controlled cruelty proves capability, and capability commands respect. Controlled cruelty is also efficient. The weak punish endlessly in small doses, constantly nagging, constantly retaliating in petty ways. The strong strike once and decisively, leaving no doubt. A ruthless act done swiftly can prevent 1,000 smaller conflicts. Mercy, when it is safe, can follow, but only after cruelty has established boundaries. Even in personal relationships, this principle applies. The man who tolerates disrespect out of mercy loses all authority. But the man who responds to betrayal with decisive consequence ensures that betrayal does not repeat. Controlled cruelty does not mean pettiness. It means establishing that there are lines that cannot be crossed. When those lines are violated, consequences are swift, final, and unquestionable. This is the art. To know when cruelty is necessary and when restraint will serve you better. To know how much punishment to deliver and no more. To know when to strike once so you do not need to strike endlessly. Cruelty is not a failure of control, it is an extension of it. And the man who masters controlled cruelty is the man who is both feared and respected, for he proves that his mercy is a choice, not a weakness. Part 9. The Discipline of Self-Mastery. True power begins within. The world cannot be conquered without first mastering the self. Yet most men never see this truth. They blame others, circumstances, luck, or society for their failures. The Machiavellian man knows that these are distractions, excuses for the weak. To be respected, feared, or influential, one must first discipline one's mind, one's emotions, one's desires. Self-mastery is a silent war. It requires the fortitude to deny fleeting pleasures that weaken the body or cloud the mind. It requires the clarity to act decisively when others hesitate, to remain calm when chaos surrounds. Most men are slaves to impulse. They react, they complain, they allow anger or desire to dictate their behavior. The man of power, however, cultivates restraint as a weapon. Restraint transforms the ordinary into the formidable. Machiavelli teaches that those who cannot govern themselves cannot govern others. The ego must be subdued, the emotions tamed. Indulgence, envy, pride, and fear must all be contained and leveraged rather than allowed to control action. A ruler who acts in passion is vulnerable. A man who acts in calculation is untouchable. The weak man lashes out, overcompensates, or pleads for recognition. The disciplined man waits, watches, and strikes only when the timing is perfect. Discipline is also strategic. Every habit, every routine, every pattern of behavior should serve a purpose. Health, intellect, patience, and emotional stability are investments in power. The man who cannot control his body or his mind will falter in the face of resistance. Those who respect you sense this discipline. It emanates like gravity. You do not have to demand respect. It recognizes you. Moreover, self-mastery is the foundation for every other lesson. Silence is impossible without control. Fear is impotent without the mastery of one's presence. Cruelty becomes strategic only when one is not ruled by emotion. The man who cannot govern himself becomes a slave of his passions, and no amount of cunning can compensate for the weakness that begins inside. To achieve self-mastery, one must embrace discomfort, confront fear, and challenge one's assumptions. Comfort creates complacency. Clarity requires vigilance. The weak man seeks solace in the approval of others. The strong man seeks the mastery of himself. Only then does he become a force beyond ordinary comprehension, a man whose mind is as sharp as his actions, whose will is unbreakable, and whose presence alone commands deference. Part 10. The Legacy of Ruthless Wisdom. The final truth, and perhaps the heaviest, is that power is meaningless without a legacy. A man who lives ruthlessly yet leaves nothing behind is a candle extinguished in the wind. Machiavelli understood that greatness is measured not by fleeting accolades or momentary influence, but by the permanence of impact. To be respected, feared, and effective is one thing, but to endure in memory, in consequence, in the structures you shape, is the ultimate triumph. Legacy is the culmination of all other lessons. Silence, fear, discipline, mystery, controlled cruelty, all converge to build a life that leaves traces in the minds and actions of others. The weak man dies unnoticed. The liked man fades into history. The respected, disciplined, and strategically ruthless man shapes events, molds perception, and alters outcomes in ways that persist long after he is gone. To craft a legacy, one must think beyond the immediate. Actions are not only measured by their effect in the moment, but by how they resonate across time. Machiavelli's enduring relevance is proof. His ideas, written centuries ago, still dictate the thinking of leaders, strategists, and power players today. He left a legacy not through popularity, not through charm, but through unflinching truth and the ruthless articulation of human nature. Legacy also demands courage, the courage to act decisively, knowing that short-term approval may be lost. The man who leaves a mark does not bow to sentiment or opinion. He accepts criticism, hostility, and misunderstanding because he is oriented toward permanence. He knows that respect, fear, and and influence are fleeting unless cemented by action that endures. Furthermore, legacy requires vision. Without foresight, power becomes a series of fleeting victories, and discipline collapses under the weight of immediate temptation. The man who thinks strategically, plans methodically, and calculates the long-term effects of his actions transforms ephemeral power into lasting authority. He becomes untouchable not because he is invincible, but because he has made himself indispensable to the structure of reality itself. His decisions, his designs, and his influence echo beyond his lifetime. Finally, the pursuit of legacy is inseparable from self-mastery, controlled cruelty, and strategic silence. These are the tools that build permanence. Without self-control, all strategy fails. Without fear, influence fades. Without mystery, memory does not hold. The man who integrates all lessons becomes a force that not only commands the present but shapes the future, a figure remembered, respected, and studied. To ignore legacy is to squander potential. To live for mere approval, momentary affection, or fleeting comfort is to live in shadows. But to embrace ruthless wisdom, to act with calculated intent, and to govern both self and others with relentless discipline is to forge a legacy. And that, above all, is the highest reward. Not mere survival, not fleeting pleasure, but enduring relevance, power, and respect that no one can revoke.